Hi there and welcome back. And today is Saturday, 20th of July, and it's day 2 of Weeting Rally. And we plan to take you around the show the next 2 days. There's a heck of a lot to see, and we're going to start with the auction. So on Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, there's an auction. I spent all day yesterday at Cheffins previewing the vintage auction that's going on over there near Ely. So catch that video when you can. And we're just heading up now to the auction site, and there's a guy on a tannoy, so I'll say meet me at the auction. So the auction today is conducted by Barry L. Hawkins, and there's 5 tractors, starting off with a NG Ransom crawler, a very tidy little Alice B, straight front axle, so an English one, and we've got a Leyland 270, again off ex-farm condition, actually in very good condition looking at it, probably mid-70s, something like that. Universal 3 Nuffield, which is the smaller of the Nuffields. The Universal standard Nuffield is the bigger version of the tractor. Again, nice off farm condition. And a Fordson Dexter. Looks like that's had a bit of a identity crisis in terms of paint shades. So a bit of a pale blue paint. That's probably the paint that they had in the shed, and it's blue, so it'll do. Nice little rally caravan if you fancy a rally caravan. Hay rake, rotary hay rake, water bowser. A very tidy little farm trailer there. That's very nice. Needs some extensions on the sides. That's probably used as a grain trailer back in the day. I think there is a chute on the back. Yes, there is. There's a chute on the back for tipping the grain, but you need to have a decent floor so all your grain doesn't fall out, and the sides also, just to keep it all in. Got 3 ploughs here, both David Brown red ones mounted, and what looks like Ransom's trailer plough. That'd be quite useful for rallies, totally behind the Fordson standard. An early David Brown plough and then a later one. Another water bowser, or maybe a diesel bowser. Nice galvanised tank. Now these make a lot of silly money, that's for sure, especially if they hold water. Good for garden ornaments, those. Bale spike, various, the pickup hitch for Ferguson, various panels and wheel centres, Fords by the look of it. There's a spring compressor, that's very useful for the workshop if you do lots of suspension jobs. Rotavator tines. There's some shepherd's hut or some chicken coop wheels there. I wonder what they'll make. People tend to go a bit crazy for those sort of things. And what people do tend to go crazy for is ride on lawnmowers, any condition. There's probably 300-400 quid's worth there. It's a bit mad really, because you don't know what you're buying. It's probably been flogged to within an inch of its life. A few lawnmowers, chipping machine for small branches, wood, timber, that sort of thing. 4 set of trailer wheels, they'd be quite useful for somebody. Tyres are a bit cracked. Iron wheels again, yes, lots of those, again, good. Especially if you're looking to make your own shepherd's hut. Sack barrow. Garden tractor wheels, iron wheels. Nice hand drill, somebody to restore. A nice homemade trailer, very similar to our trailer for our Marshall. In fact, it's almost identical. Milk churns, Nice bucket, 3-point mounted scoop. International B250 parts, engines, parts, radiator, clutch, cowlings, front axle as well. Nice Bamford's corn mill. That's a nice little unit, that one. Looks like that's recently been used as well, which is always good to know. A few engines. There's a Douglas engine there. 2 Douglas, in fact. Generator and a wide cylinder mower. Greens cylinder mower. Zephyr 24-inch. Looks like a modern one. And some corner feed troughs for horse stables and things. Been found in the bottom of a shed. That one's got a corner broken. Again, quite likely going to end up in someone's garden. Galvanised tanks, again, they'll end up in someone's garden. Another one there. Some oil tanks. Now these are interesting, but it looks like this one's rotten. A lovely tap on there, look at that. Nice riveted galvanised tank that someone's painted. Big hefty tap on it. Period bicycle, Raleigh by the look of it. Yep, definitely. Ruston single cylinder engine there with a clutch assembly on it. On its trolley. That's very nice. Bit of scrap corrugated tin. Someone will use it, I suppose. Go-kart if you want a project for your kid. What looks like Ferguson wings, which have been painted red. Crane hoist for a trailer or some such thing. Petrol pumps. Nice big cast iron wheels. 13,500 pound winch with a tow bar. Wonder whether what that will make. Because I'm looking for a big winch. Wonder whether it works, that's the question. Collapsible hoist, 1-ton engine hoist. And some more straps and chains. More cast wheels. Very nice cast iron sign there. Denning Chard, England, Sunderland Forge and Engineering Company Limited. Interesting. Massey 35 wings. Little walk behind single row seating unit. Someone would have to enlighten me on that one. I don't know what that is. Looks like it's some kind of bird scarer, perhaps. There's a little motor on it. Looks like a wiper motor with a rotating shaft and some crocodile clips. Lovely little Myford lathe there. Model maker's lathe. It's got a lot of kit with it as well. Yeah, it's very similar to ours, actually. Taps and dies. Very old set of taps and dies. Another corn grinder. Very common to see. Bamfords. I think those are Bamfords. The world's best grinding mill. List of the engine. And another. And this is a roller mill with a grinding attachment on the end. So you've got your roller mill. This one's got the wide rollers. And then you've got your grinding mill on the end of this. We had one of these. Remember Dad grinding corn with one of those, hooked up to the 27-inch tractor that we had at the time. You got some standalone generator sets and 3-4 anvils, double-ended one there. Don't see one of them very often. And whoever bashed that one, crikey, they must have hit that bloody hard. How the hell do you break an anvil? Very nice little anvil on a stand there. Trouble with anvils, they make a heck of a lot of money, and I really would like one because I haven't got one. And they're very handy. This is a nice small one actually. That would be very handy if I could get that, but we'll see how things go. A couple of welders. Come over this side, very handy 4-wheel turntable trolley with a big cage on it. That's quite useful. There's a very nice CAV lamp there that looks like that might be military. Got some green military paint on it. That's a bit of wall art, isn't it? Probably make that work again. CAV. Some decent jacks, hydraulic ones. There's some screw jacks, they're very useful. There's another collapsible 1-ton engine hoist. A few toolboxes, some chains, wire rope. Tyre machine, I think that's what that's for. Cheap one by the look of it. Nice little toolbox for somebody. Wire hawsers. And we've got a shot blast cabinet as well, complete with abrasive. Looks like it's hardly been used. Now, petrol pumps, especially ancient ones, are very collectible. I wonder if these will be in the future. I suppose they are of an era, aren't they? 80s, 70s, 80s pump with the this has got LEDs on it actually, but they used to flick over with little paddles with the numbers on. So this is probably not as old as you might think, but it is pretty old. I bet that's 30 plus years old, if not more. I wonder if they'll have the same following that petrol pumps, ancient petrol pumps do now, from the 30s and 40s and earlier. So yeah, maybe it's something that someone would like to try and fix and, I don't know, have some quirky art installation with it maybe. So there's your auction at Weeting this year. There's a few interesting things actually, but I think I'm going to be in the ring when the auction's going on, so taking the tractor around, so maybe not be able to get onto it, but we'll see. 10:30 and the tractor parade started. We'll just watch a few come in. We'll take a nice walk down the tractor line a bit later on when they're all static. Try and catch a few work in, because the good thing about Weeting is that it's a working rally, which is unusual in this time of year, because generally working rallies are generally ploughing, which you don't do until the autumn obviously. But of course it's harvest time, so we've got working demonstrations with a few combines, and we've also got some cultivations as well. There's so much space here that they've allocated some ploughing area and for the steam and tractors and cultivations as well. So from that point of view, you get everything. It's a very unusual blue and grey Ferguson. Quite why it's blue and grey is anyone's guess. Absolutely wonderful Patinas E27 P6. And I just love that sound that it makes. 6-cylinder, diesel, Perkins knock, followed closely by a very tidy Fortune Standard N. Runs very beautifully, no horrible noises from the engine. An older restoration, I think. Richie Zanzani iron horse motor plough. those motor ploughs, they could be a bit of a pain if you're trying to operate them in heavy ground, because it's a bit like the tail wagging the dog. There's a lot of power in them. The old trusses were the same. Grey and gold Fergie, this was the 35 before it became red and grey. That's in beautiful condition. Very nicely done. I think they were trying out colours in that period of Massey Ferguson and Ferguson and trying to decide what was good. Another NG crawler, there's one in the tail we've just seen. Again, very nicely restored. And these are very popular, these little horse garden tractors. You see quite a few of these at rallies now. I think it's the modern horticultural equipment. So the MG crawler in front was what the horticulturalists used to use. A nice little compact tractor for getting around small market garden plots. And then wheel horse designed little single cylinder tractors for being used in the same sort of environment. The BMC mini tractor. Morning. Nice modern 3070 Massey. Datatronic. It's a bit strange at a vintage show. Very nice Farmwell 8. Makes a few funny noises in there, but anyway. The ever popular 135 Massey Ferguson, another grey and gold Ferguson 35. This is the 35X. Again, there's so many to remember. This is the European Bout tractor, probably German, I would say, possibly Austrian, something like that. The ubiquitous Field Marshal knot, proper Marshal. And here we've got a pair of Nuffields, so we've got a 460 in front, and then the earlier Universal 1060. This year, to mark D-Day, they've got a display of 1940s tractors, and this Minneapolis Moline is one of those that's in the lineup for 1940s tractors. So these tractors were built in the 40s. A lot of them would have been American imports in the wartime agreement with the USA and Great Britain under the Lease-Lend scheme to help with the war effort and providing food. One tractor that was not in that scheme was this. This is a Power Major with what looks like a V8 Perkins fitted to it. So a hefty old conversion. And we'll have a look down the line of the 1940s tractors a bit later on. Big Prairie tractor coming up here now. This is an Australian Chamberlain, built in Australia. It's got a Detroit 2-stroke diesel in it. Known as a screaming chimney because it's got a blower on the side, and when it's working at full chat it screams. And they made them up to 8 cylinders in size. Well, we've got a 1960s International 434. It's an unusual tractor you don't see very often, unlike the grey Fergie, of course. There's a raft of grey here this weekend. Of course, they made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these, so there's no, if not millions in fact, so there's no surprise that, and a lot of them survive. There's no surprise that you see a lot of rallies. They're easy to work on, they're easy to store and maintain. And another very nice Wartime Super Dexter there. And for me, one of the tractors of the lineup is this Wallace, 1925 I think, or 23. It came over from America in the 1980s as an import to a collection, and the owner tells me that he bought it pretty much as it is. There had been a lot of work been done to it, and it's absolutely glorious condition. Got a fantastic look to it, and it sounds awesome. Hopefully you caught all of that, because it's very, very noisy. So these are the tractors that kept us fed during and after the war. You've got the ubiquitous standard Fordson agricultural Model N on steel wheels. You'll see plenty of pictures of those, period pictures, ploughing fields, and they ploughed up hundreds of thousands, if not millions of acres in the war. And all of these tractors in this line were all built around the 1940s, so they're all wartime operational tractors, basically growing food for the war effort to keep Britain fed. As they all say, an army marches on its stomach, and we provided the food using equipment like this. The American equipment all came in on the lease lend scheme. That was an agreement between America and Great Britain. Alice Chalmers' row crop tractor is a prime example of one of these lease lend tractors, and it was a scheme where the American government provided the equipment on loan to the British government, but I don't think the loan was ever reciprocated. I don't think it was ever paid back. John Deere is another one that would have come in. But of course we built our own tractors in the war, and the Fordson is the most iconic wartime tractor I think you'll find anywhere. And matched with the Ransom's plough, it was an unbeatable machine. It would plonk away all day ploughing up land so we can cultivate crops. Minneapolis Moline was another one coming over the wartime on the lease lend. And of course we've got two Alice Chalmers here, one on steels, which is unusual to see. The one on steels has a bow front axle, which means that it's an earlier tractor. The second one's got a straight front axle, which means it's either built here and was, or possibly was a later one imported from America. However, I think that this one could be a C, because down here it's got a steering, what looks like a steering handle there, or steering lever for a tricycle front, and that was the Alice Chalmers C, so that possibly could have been a different machine. We've got the steam up whistle in the background, and of course International were also very instrumental in providing equipment for Britain. The Farmall range was very, very popular in the wartime. I think they've had their fun, that's good. So yeah, nice lineup of wartime tractors. We take a quick trip down to the tractor line, and we're starting off with the horticultural tractors. The wheel horse we saw earlier, and there's a beam tool carrier. This one unusually is set up with some seeders. Generally they've got harrows and cultivators underneath, but this has actually got seeders on it, which is quite useful. Over the far side we've got some more wheel horse and the MG crawler that we saw as well earlier. So here we have a track grip, which is an unusual looking machine used in the horticultural industry for transporting bits and pieces around your garden, horticultural nurseries and such like. 3 wheels, single cylinder engine. Very interesting machine, you won't see one of those very often. And here we have that Bout that we saw earlier in the parade, and it is a German machine. It came over in 2007 from Germany. It was imported and restored according to the history file. And interestingly, I didn't know this, Bout was taken over by Claas in 1969. And of course Claas now make tractors. They concentrated on harvesting machinery for many decades, but of course they do now make tractors again. Now, are John Deere's the Rolls-Royce of tractors? Some would have you believe that they are. They've been going many, many years. It started with the Waterloo Boy, with the Waterloo Gasoline Company in America in 1910, 1912, something like that. And they're still making them today in their own name, which again is very unusual. John Deere have resisted takeover bids. All the other manufacturers I think now are collaborated. International and Case, Ford, New Holland, David Brown also went with Case and International Harvester, but John Deere, they stayed as John Deere. Got a fair selection of combines here. It's a big Ransom's combine from the 60s and 70s. The Matty 735 combine. 8 foot cut maybe, 10 foot if you're lucky. Got a bagger attachment, so a guy would stand on the platform and with some sacks, and the sacks would be filled with grain as it cut the corn and it threshed it, and then the sacks would be left on the ground for somebody to come along with a tractor and trailer and pick them up. And this is what your combines evolved into. Massive machines. They would gulp up acres in an hour, basically to get it all in as soon as and quickly as possible. Of course, with the population expanding rapidly in the 1950s, the need to get the country fed became even greater, really almost since wartime, and farm equipment got increasingly larger and larger. If you remember from the Cheffins video that I did yesterday, that versatile Fiat articulated tractor, that was the nature of the equipment in the 80s and 90s. Absolutely huge. Get it cultivated, get it set with corn, get it set with seed, and get it growing and get it harvested. The quicker and the more we can do, the more we can make. It's a very early class baler. Fayre were a German company that made harvesting equipment. Obviously very famous for their combine back in those days. Can you imagine transitioning from a binder to this, making a lot of noise. Again, it was the marketing technology, self-propelled, combine and such and you can just imagine working that all day, making all that noise.
Yeah, but what happened? You get too much into the fingers, just doing that, and then stop doing that.
It's not the most tidy of bales, but nonetheless it's baled up, and it would leave one bale as you went along, scatter them all over the field, and then someone would go along and just pick them up, put them on a trailer. So we were looking at combines earlier, and before combines we had threshing drums and threshing sets, and you can see how much room all this lot takes up. So we have a traction engine with a threshing drum, a very old threshing drum, rather because it's got cart wheels on it, very wooden cart wheels rather than the later iron wheels. And then the straw would be fed into the top of the machine by a human being, having been cut by a binder in the field. And made into a sheave. The sheave would be carted to the rick yard, where it would then be stacked, ready for waiting for the threshing crew to come along and set up their equipment. Once the sheave has gone into the threshing drum, it basically threshes the corn. The corn goes out into a bag at the end of the machine, between the front of the traction engine and the back of the threshing drum. So the straw would be ejected from the end of the back end of the threshing drum on those fingers that you can see poking themselves out of the end of the drum. It would go onto an elevator, and then the options were to stack it in a rick so that it could be used for feed and bedding for animals, or it would be then elevated and then dropped into a static baler, which is also being driven by another traction engine. So the amount of crew required and equipment was a really intensive process to get this corn off the field into bags and stacked in ricks. But of course that made, even though they was using a lot of men doing this, there was a lot less men than what they used to have, because it used to be all manual intensive hard labour to do the same job. So mechanised farming really was taking off in the end of the 19th century, and this is what we had for the next 20 to 30, 40 years. Combines then came along, balers came along, and the process was done in an afternoon rather than over a period of number of days. quite fascinating to see, and there are some rallies around that you can see all of this happening, but there's not very many. There's few and far between, and it's really important to see this stuff happening so that you can understand the processes that went into to doing all of this, and compare that to where we are today with that huge great green John Deere combine that we saw earlier. Everything's come from this to that. Certainly one thing you do not have anywhere else except at Weeting is a huge static stationary engine, complete with boiler, in running order. And we've got a second one next to it as well, which I've not seen run before, so I don't know if that is a runner. But this is John's Boiler House, and this is a unique exhibit at a steam rally. You can find plenty of them in fixed exhibits in museums, industrial heritage museums and such like, but you'll not find another one at any other rally like this. Absolutely unique. Another very interesting display is, of course, wood sawing. They've got their own dedicated wood saw yard here, and here we're using Lord Derby, another one of Richard Parrott's engines, to transport that log from the wood pile into the wood sawing yard. And then you can just see Lord Derby that's just loaded the log onto the frame there, ready to go onto the circular saw to be sawn up into planks. And it's by no means an easy job moving one of those around. They are very, very heavy, and you would not want that to roll off of there onto your leg. So it looks like they're just about to manoeuvre that half sawn log into position for the next pass. There's 2 rack saw benches in view here, and actually there's one over the far side as well, so that's 3 in total. And the rack saw bench would be a circular saw, or possibly a reciprocating saw, but it would be an automatic feed, so it would feed the whole log along automatically with the mechanism. Whereas with a circular saw, standalone one, you can hear working in the background, that's 2 men at the moment pushing a log through by hand. And the rack bench would basically do this automatically for you. The good thing from that point of view was that you didn't put yourself in danger of the saw. As you can see, it's a very vulnerable position being around that saw, and it would make literally mincemeat of anybody that got anywhere near it. And he's just about to fire up the engine to get the saw bench working. There she goes. And you can see now that the log is actually working its way towards the saw. It looks a bit like one of those horror movies, or one of those Dick Dastardly movies where you've got the fair maiden attached to the saw bench, and her feet are getting closer and closer to the saw bench, and then at the last second she surrenders. Or maybe the knight in shining armour manages to rescue her just at the last second before she gets picked up by the circular saw. Certainly equipment from a bygone age. Something that you definitely do not get at every other steam rally, and that is its very own resident model railway. And we've got the options of diesel replicas, we've got steam over in the engine sheds at the far end there, And this is the domain of the Brandon and District Society of Model Engineers. They've got their own set of tracks. And here comes another engine now. Absolutely fantastic to see. And of course for taking rides for the children and families and adults. Absolutely lovely. Look at this beautiful little engine coming along now. Absolutely great to see. It's got its own level crossing, as I say, and it's got its own railway bridge where you can stand on the top and let the smoke come up from the chimneys as the trains pass underneath, just like they did in the old days. And the Brandon Model Engineers have got their own tent with various bits and pieces that they've made. Absolutely fantastic craftsmanship. Boats, Land Rovers and their trailers to go with them, and of course railway engines, which is what they all love. They're absolutely exquisite craftsmanship. This is live steam. Something this small is live steam, and somebody has built that from scratch. Absolutely fabulous. There's some steam engines, traction engine, stationary engine like a beam engine, all working models, all built by very skilled men and women, of course. An absolute labour of love. Another utterly unique exhibit that you'll find at Weeting and nowhere else is a working tank engine with its own line, and currently it's coupled to a railway crane. It's got its own piece of line, even with points up the far end there to go around into the wood there. And this engine is a Barclay built in Kilmarnock in Scotland, and it's named Little Barford. I can't remember the full history of this engine, but I do know that it worked at Little Barford Power Station near St Neots. And at that time, Little Barford, or rather St Neots was in Huntingdonshire, but Little Barford is in Bedfordshire, and literally they're within a mile of each other. And I know that because I used to live in St Neots in Cambridgeshire, and this engine worked at Little Barford. I think it went from there into preservation and went onto a preservation line somewhere, and then it's purchased by somebody in the Weeting Rally family to end its days or exhibit its days here. And it's an absolutely excellent condition tank engine. They're just filling with water, so whether I'll get to see it chuff up and down the rails in a moment is not sure. We'll wait to see. And it looks like he's ready to go. We've got the water done. Put the top on, and the safety valves are just blowing off, so we've got good fire, plenty of steam, plenty of pressure. Absolutely glorious sound that makes. there, and it's day 3 of Weeting Rally. It's much cooler today. I've got my 4th shirt on. Friday was flipping hot. Yesterday, Saturday was still pretty warm, but not quite as a bit more bearable. And today is much cooler and overcast. So it's going to be quite a pleasant day from that point of view. And today is a walk around on the engine line. See what is here. We're in Burrell country because we're not very far from Thetford, where barrels were made, and so we're going to see quite a few of those today. So let's take a walk along the line and see what we've got. It's about 9:30 in the morning and everyone's starting to light up, so we'll be able to see people getting their fires together and cleaning their engines down ready for the day's work. So let's have a look, see what's going on. So we'll just have a wander along the line and see what's happening. You can see as we walk down this line of traction engines, agricultural engines of course. This provided the mechanised power for the agricultural industry around the turn of the 1900s, the 20th century, late 1800s, early 1900s, right up until about 1940. Steam was in regular use for thrashing, baling, general haulage, ploughing, and all sorts of other industries as well, road making, road haulage. Steam was the go-to power at that time. And then of course not long after, steam didn't actually have that long in enjoyment. I mean, there was a lot of stationary steam engines in the 19th century. Trevithick created the steam engine, and it revolutionised. It's part of the Industrial Revolution, of course. They stuck wheels on them and started moving them around in their own power around about 1850, something like that, and culminated in what we see here today. Weeting Rally was set up in 1968 by Mr. Parrott, Richard Parrott, at Fengate Farm at Weeting in Norfolk in the UK. And this rally is very much an educational rally. There's all sorts going on, as you've probably seen in the videos that I've done. There's all sorts happening here, and lots of demonstrations. Now, this being Burrell country, there's about 32 Burrell engines on show today for this weekend. There's a total of 96 full-size engines, 32 of them are Burrell, so that's a third of the engines here are Burrell. And it's no surprise given the fact that Thetford, where they were built, is only about 10 miles up the road. And I think Richard Parrott actually owns about 3 or 4 Burrells, and he's certainly got the oldest Burrell in the UK, called Century. I think it was built in 1886, something like that. We might find it as we come along the line. And there's 2 agricultural engines side by side. A very prominent steam wagon manufacturer was Foden's, and they built these un-overtight wagons. And overtight means that it's got the steam engine on top of the boiler, exactly the same as the traction engine's got, but it's got very high road gears, so it goes fast on the road. And Foden's were a very prominent and prolific manufacturer of these. Here we've got a Marshall steam tractor. If you notice, it's quite a stubby, short wheelbase for manoeuvring bends, and quite fast on the road as well, being a tractor. So this would have been used for road haulage, light road haulage. Being a tractor, it's not hugely powerful, although it is a compound engine with twin cylinders, so it would have a bit more power than a single, and a bit more versatility as well. It's a very beautiful engine. So as we walk along the line, we'll see every third engine effectively is a Burrell, and there is another one. And this one is a this one is a compound, but it's a single crank compound. And if you look on the cylinder block, you've got the high pressure and low cylinder, one above the other, because it's working off the same crank. Instead of having two cranks, it's got one crank. I think it's Burrell that's the only manufacturer that patented and used that design. Here we have another Burrell, Britannia, and they're just lighting the fire. I think they've completed their cleaning. It looks pretty tidy, and if you can see the smoke, we have got early signs of kindling and a bit of coal on there, just starting to heat the boiler up, ready to go. And this one, in comparison to the previous engine we looked at, is a compound again, but the cylinders are side by side. And if you look on the motion area, we've got two cranks. So we've got one crank working in one cylinder and the other crank working the other cylinder. Whereas with the other engine we saw a moment ago, that was done with one crank on both cylinders. Very clever design. The Burrells, of course, were very popular, very well known traction engine manufacturer, and that's why they are so prolific. Burrell and Fowler, you'll see a lot of Fowlers here as well. And here we have another one, and the difference on this one is it's got a single cylinder, so this is a single cylinder engine. So we've seen all three variants. There's a single cylinder. Morning, how you doing? Looking nice? Oh yes, yeah, it was good, yeah. Yeah. Looking nice and clean and tidy. Looking nice and clean and tidy. It's going to be a bit cooler today. Yeah. I know you managed to sneak in at least once over the weekend on your tractor as well, which I thought was and there's another single Burrell.
Oh yeah, I like it. Unfortunately it broke down again, but never mind, we've got a good tow though.
And here we have a couple of Fowler engines, so this is a roller, very pretty in its maroon dark red colour. And one of the mighty road locomotives that Fowler made. Fowler and Burrell, probably the most well-known engine manufacturers, and this would have been a road locomotive, so heavy haulage for this one. So the Marshall that we saw, the little tractor, that would have been light road haulage. This would have been heavy road haulage, and it wasn't uncommon to see 3 or 4 trailers being pulled by these engines. And of course everyone knows the steam showman's engines. This particular engine is Queen Mary, and it's owned by the Burrell Trust, the Burrell Museum in Thetford. And this is roaded regularly to various rallies throughout East Anglia. And it's a very, very well-known engine. And you notice that it's not as shiny as the others. Now in the day, yes, the showman took very great care of their engines, made sure that they worked properly and everything else, and that the shiny bits shone, but the rest of the engine, it was a working engine, it was a working machine in those days. When they were running the fairground, they weren't all shiny and looking lovely like they do now on the rally field. They were working engines, and they were there to do a job. And this is the condition that you would have found it in when it would have been on the fairground back in 1910, whenever that may have been. Compare that in contrast to the one next to it, which is all nicely shone up and painted, and that's lovely for a show, but it wasn't how they were necessarily. And we've got one more Fowler roller on this line here. Again, you see them all nicely painted up at rallies, but of course they were working machines, and road building was a dirty, filthy job. So as long as the engine worked and the important bits were clean, that's what mattered. Now this engine is a Marshall single cylinder traction engine, and this is the same engine that we have the model of. So our little 3-inch engine is based on this engine here in front of us. It's an agricultural type engine. It's pretty much identical as far as models go, you know, miniature steam goes, to the real thing. And this is exactly the same colours and basically the same design as the model that we have. It's a very lovely engine. And of course, a lot of these engines are rescued from hedgerows, barns, yards, wherever they've been left. And it looks like that this particular one, if we just zoom in onto these two pictures here at the top, this engine was clearly left on the side of a wood, left in derelict condition. And as we go down, we can see the ongoing restoration of the engine right down to when it was completed before it was painted at the bottom there. It spent all its working life in the Isle of Man, apparently, according to the history file, and it was left derelict for 30 years and robbed of most of its parts. Of course, all the brass would have been scrapped in the day, and bits would have been filched for other engines. People would have taken bits for mementos to put in their barn, bits that they could steal. So it's a real credit to the owners and the previous owners who rescued it and restored this back to working order, given the fact that it was derelict. Really lovely engine. Very, very similar steam lorry to the Foden design, the overtype wagon. Man's also made very similar machine. It looks almost identical, but you can't really change the design of these things. They are what they are, and this is a different version, but it's the Man's take on a steam lorry. Of course, it's a well-known fact that where you find a group of steam engines and engine owners, you'll find a pub. In this case, the beer tent. And everyone that's got an engine, if you notice, they've got a pint of beer in their hands. And owning a steam engine, it's the law. If you own a steam engine, you've got to drink beer. And if you remember old Fred Dibner, the steeplejack from Bolton in Lancashire, you never ever saw him without a beer in his hand. So all road making demonstrations start with making the stones to go into the bed of the road. And the way they did this was a stone crusher. It was generally belt driven with some kind of power. In this case, it's one of Mr. Parrott's engines, Spitfire. And they're driving a stone crusher and just about to put some stuff in the top. There he goes. So he puts in the rocks, doesn't matter what size, and the inertia of the flywheel would basically push a huge slab of steel or iron and basically crush the stone, and you can see it coming out the bottom. You could adjust the amount of size or the size of the stone coming out the bottom so that it would you could have different grades of stone, so large or small, and it would go from there to be used as the bed of the road. So from there, almost certainly would be taken by wheelbarrow or possibly some kind of scoop with a little Merhill loader attachment there, and it will be taken to where you want to put it into the road, and it would be then levelled out using a dozer, something like this. Compact little machine, and of course dozers come in all shapes and sizes depending on how much material you want to move. Caterpillar made the most famous bulldozers, probably. Up to D9 I think they've got to. Absolutely huge machines for road building and big infrastructure projects. We've got another stone crusher unit here. with a Manitou forklift. Sorry, not a Manitou forklift, is it? It's a Manitou loader. Taking the stone from the stone crusher to where it's needed. This one's powered by a steam portable engine. I think it's a Marshall by the look of it. It's a lovely patina actually, it's beautiful. Of course, well, we've got a steam engine, we need water, we need coal, and we need living accommodation, because the guys that built the roads back in those days, they used to live on the road and just travel around to wherever the next job came. So all of the equipment that's required went with you. And here we've got a steamroller, which is what everybody knows used to fix the roads, and then a diesel roller in front of it, the yellow one. And this would, of course, once your stone was in the ground, this would, of course, roll it out flat. Having been dozed level, this would roll it flat and compact it down, so it made a nice, strong road surface. There's a tar boiler there, which would make up your tar macadam on site as you went along. So you put stone in there with tar, and then you'd roll that in with your roller on top. Of course, a lot of the roads in England were built by the Romans, and they are ancient. The roads are ancient. They go back thousands of years. And of course the Romans, if you look that up, the road building program by the Romans in the UK, they really went to town. They went down so that it would drain properly, it had a really firm base, it went very deep. And of course everything that happened since on those roads was enhancing what had already been done and gone before. I'm a bit sceptical that they build roads quite as well as they did then. If you wanted small compaction jobs, then you use one of these things, which is basically a single cylinder engine with a great big heavy foot on the bottom. And I remember these being used back in the 70s when I was watching road building happening and repairs to the road. They had a trench they needed to fill in. They'd fill the trench in and then they'd go along with this. So you didn't need a roller for it, you used this thing. And it's pretty heavy. It's got an igniter on it and a magneto, which once you press the trigger, there's fuel in it, it would ignite the piston, the thing would jump in the air, and then it would come down and bash the ground down, so that it would compact the ground. And I think you need to have your wits about you when you're using one of these, because I think what will happen is you're either going to put it on your foot, or you're going to bash yourself in the face with it. It can be a bit temperamental. If you watch sometimes these people using these things, it can be a bit temperamental and take you by surprise. And you've really got to know what you're doing so that you don't hurt yourself. They were banned in the end because they were dangerous. And now what you see is road menders with small rollers on the back in little trailers now doing the job, which could be argued doesn't do quite as good a job. They're not quite as rugged as these things perhaps. Certainly perhaps not as heavy even. But it certainly did the job when it was needed. A nice Bedford Pantechnicon from Abel's of Wartime, Norfolk. Next to that is an ERF Arctic. Abel's well-known removals firm in East Anglia. Nice little tripod delivery van there, based on a tricycle motorcycle. Another comma, Pantechnicon, that looks like a livestock, possibly a livestock wagon of some description.
Daddy, come look at this!
Unipower forestry tractor, and next to that, Matador. Austin flatbed. Complete with living van by the look of it. Very nice and tidy. I think that's a modern replica living van, looking at the undercarriage of it. Certainly looks like it's got Ford Focus wheels on it. And then we've got a couple of Latiel timber tractors. These are all as unusual to see, but very nice to see nonetheless. 1963, 64 Dodge. Looks like a recovery crane or a crane hire. Yeah, so that's a collapsible crane on the back of that Dodge. That's unusual. Lots of dogs around, lots of noise. Very sorry about that. Organs, laughing. What's all that laughing about? Stop it immediately. No, I'm only joking. Seddon Atkinson lorry from 1994 with a beaver tail step frame wagon on the back. Kenworth, American machine, 8-legger, flatbed. Again, looks like it's being used for transportation for vehicles. It's got some ramps on the back there. They're a big, lovely machine, really. You see those in America, the big rigs, as they call them, trucking down the highway. A couple more timber tractors. AECs, I'm not sure what the second one is in, but we've got 3 AECs in a row, 2 red ones and a green one on the end there. All got winches on the back for hauling logs. And here we've got some light commercials coming up. So we've got a Bedford. Very nicely restored Bedford. J-series Bedford lorry. It's got, it's a local machine. It's was supplied to Darkins of Stoke Ferry, which is just up the road from here. Went to Banham's at Feltwell, and then into Chesterfield. So it left the area and then came back to Stoke Ferry and restored to its original colour. Another Bedford lorry a bit earlier. It's behind a wire, so I can't actually get up to the history file to tell you much about it. But an older restoration, but nice and tidy nonetheless. And another one with a Perkins diesel engine in it. This one's got a Scammell coupling on the back, and again, if you check my Stradset video, there was a Scammell mechanical horse there with a Scammell coupling on the back there, which I described the operation. Thames Trader from the 60s. Flatbed. And another Thames Trader a bit earlier. And Austin, little flatbed truck, very nicely restored as well. Very useful bits of kit really if you want to use it for something. And the 1970s Bedford, or 1960s in this case, 1968 Bedford TK flatbed lorry. And it's when I see one of these, I lament the day that my dad cut a couple of these up for scrap. They actually were tractor units with trailers and everything, with a Scammell coupling, and he bought the unit from where he worked in Skefco in Luton, and they used Bedford TK tractor units with trailers, Scammell couplings. He bought the trailers and the tractor units to cut the Scammell coupling off the tractor unit to then build a bale trailer, or a couple of bale trailers, which he then subsequently sold. And we cut up a Bedford TK tractor. And I remember driving it back actually. I think I was probably underage. But I remember driving the truck back from Luton. Still, one that's cut up, there's always one that's restored, let's hope. Beautifully restored, this TK actually. Interior's lovely done. Even got chrome towing rings. I'm not sure that they were real. Chrome hinges, I'm not sure that it had chrome hinges, the originals, but maybe they did. All of that in there is chrome. That looks original actually, so that probably is correct. But this is beautifully restored. I do like this. We've got a number of vintage cars in their own section, vintage and veterans. And there's an unusual Swift there, we don't see one of those very often. Open Tourer. Austin 7 Ruby. My godfather had one of those. Now resides at Pitstone Museum, I think, in Buckinghamshire. Little Morgan three-wheeler. And an Elvis two-seat, I suppose you'd call that an open tourer, coupe. And then whenever I see one of these, I always think of Laurel and Hardy. So this one obviously is, it's a Model T Ford, of course, 1924 this one, and it's got a closed body on it. Every time I think of Laurel Hardy, I remember them in one of these, but with an open top. And watching those Laurel and Hardy movies on the television on a Saturday afternoon when I was little, they always drove, or seemed to drive, what looked like, if it wasn't, but what looked like a Model T Ford, and I think that's probably what it was. Very unusual driving method on these. The pedals are all in weird and wonderful places. And if you check out YouTube channel Antique Cars and Stuff, there's a guy in America who's got 3 or 4 of these, and he's actually got a video on there of how you actually drive one of these things. So I think actually some of the gear changes are actually on the pedals themselves. Very unusual to drive. I think you struggle to steal one if you didn't know how to drive it. But yeah, of course Henry Ford was famous saying you can any colour you want as long as it's black, and a majority of Model T Fords, of course, were black. Lovely little Morris. A Wolsey, some very nice vintage cars, beautifully looked after. Rover, and another Wolsey at the end here. Now I confess I don't know a huge amount about vintage cars. A V8 Pilot, gas guzzling from America, but a beautiful car nonetheless. A slammed Ford Popular. That does look pretty cool actually, I have to say. I do like that. Offset wheels, dished. I wonder what engine that's got in it. I bet that's not standard. There's another Austin 7 Ruby Saloon. 1937. Of course, Austin made some very popular cars. We've got a 1929 Hillman Open Tourer. This is an Overland built by the Willis Overland Company, Toledo in Ohio, so an American import. It's got an English registration on it, so presumably it's an original import. And of course Willis are famous for making the Willis Jeep, the 1940s Willis Jeep used in the Second World War. That's what we would know as Willis over here. And again, on Antique Cars and Stuff, if you check out his YouTube channel, he's got a Willis pickup that he's repairing at the moment and restoring. It's got the engine out just now, and it's a bigger version, four-wheel drive pickup. It's a bigger version of the Willis Jeep that we all know and love from the World War II movies that we see flying around. And here is a standard Ford Popular as well, so compared to the slammed version you just saw a moment ago, this is a standard Ford Pop, and this would have been your standard family car in the 1950s, and a beautiful restoration it is. Ford Consul, another big family car from 1950s, 1960s. And a couple of light commercials. We've got a Morris 8 van and a Morris Cowley pickup truck, which I really do like actually. 4 Series 1 Land Rovers. So I absolutely adore Series 1 Land Rovers. I don't have one of my own yet. It's certainly on the shopping list. The first one, I see this around quite a lot at the rallies. So this is a breakdown truck with Henlow Garage written on it. So presumably it came from Henlow in Bedfordshire. It was derelict when it was found and it's been completely restored. Here's a Series 1 station wagon. Very nice and very rare. Got the safari roof on the top. Do apologise for the organ, making a lot of noise. And then we've got the 80-inch Series 1 pickup. And finally the 80-inch hardtop Series 1. We'll take a quick walk along the motorcycle line. There's quite a few motorcycles today. Everything from relatively modern to relatively ancient. Now, I've said before on the channel I don't know very much about motorcycles. I do like looking at them, but they've never really lit my fire, if I'm honest. I actually didn't drive a motorcycle until early this year, and that's when I was in India. Our host has a Royal Enfield and he let me drive it up and down his road, and I have to say I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't feel safe. But of course motorcycles are enjoyed by millions of people all over the world, and they're very versatile, very useful in traffic. You can skip the queues and such like, and you can have fun on them as well. So here's a trials bike with a sidecar. I'm sure that's quite fun to drive. But for me, they don't fill me with confidence. Some of them are fantastic to look at, and I do love the older ones as well as the newer ones, looking at them. There are some really lovely machines that were built over the years. And fair play to anybody that repairs these. There's a really interesting sidecar in the shape of a boat. I like that. That's really good. And of course we've got a tiny little moped down there, a little pedal moped. There's quite a few motorbikes for sale at Cheffins this time around. Even for July sale there must have been about 20 motorbikes. Now this looks like it's ripe for restoration, so I wonder whether it is going to be restored or not. It's a Francis Barnett Scrambler, 200cc Villiers engine in it. So maybe someone's got the plans for that one.
Don't order two.
All sorts of makes that you don't see now. Greaves, don't see a Greaves. Francis Barnett, don't see them. Don't see BSA anymore. Matchless. Of course Triumph are still going, but I believe, I may be wrong because I don't know much about them, but maybe they're built overseas. I'm not sure if they're built in this country still. And that's a very stripped down bike. I like that one. It looks like that might be quite easier to drive actually. It's got low centre of gravity as well, which helps. Very 1950s looking sidecar there. And when I see something like this, I always remember on the buses, when they used to go out in the sidecar and motorbike, with Olive sitting in the sidecar. Very funny indeed. On the buses, if you're from another country, check out On the Buses. They're almost still allowed to show it because it's a little bit irreverent and very sexist. Now, post bikes. Now this brings back memories for me. So my mother was a postwoman. Once she'd finished bringing me up, she went to become a post lady, and she delivered in our village. And she had a bike just like this, so that brings back some memories. Royal Mail, red and white. And then finally there's a GPO cycle. That looks very similar to the one that was for sale at Cheffins back in April. Whether it's the same one or not, I'm not really sure. And that's your motorbike lineup. Well, that's Weeting for 2024. I hope you enjoyed the videos. If you did, please like and subscribe to keep up with our mechanical adventures, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care and bye for now, and we'll leave the last word to the steam engines at Weeting.